All right, class, today we're going to be going over lesson 29, which is making linear equations from function tables. So let's do a quick reminder of what a linear equation is. A linear equation is going to be written in y equals mx plus b form. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that m is the slope. So it's going to be y is equal to the slope times x plus b, and b is our y-intercept. And there's two important things to remember about slope and y-intercept. Slope can also be talked about as rise over run, okay? And y-intercept can also be talked about as the initial value. The initial value. So when you're looking at a coordinate grid like this with an x and y axis, okay, your y-axis is this one, your x-axis is this one, and your slope continues like this in all directions. And so your slope is going to be how fast does your line rise versus how far does it run. And your y-intercept, or your initial value, is going to be the spot where it crosses the y-axis. So this yellow dot is your y-axis, or your y-intercept, and this green line is the slope of your line. So, and really what the slope-intercept form can be used to find is if you want to know an x value and a y value, where those meet, they meet on this line. So if x is 1, y is also 1, right? Because x-axis coming up this way, y-axis coming up this way, and so you're able to kind of plug those in and solve for each other. And we're going to work on that a little bit today. So let's start out figuring out how to write a linear equation from this table, because there's a linear equation that works for this table. So your first step number 1, is to find m, find the slope. And we're going to do that by, let me erase that green text here. We're going to do that by finding the change between variables. And so what does that mean? Well, we're going to use a little tool to do that. And I'm going to show you that tool right now. That tool is the change in y over the change in x. So we're going to calculate y2, and you can actually see I've labeled y2 right here. That's the second y value, y2, minus y1. That's the first y value. That's right there. Okay, and we're going to calculate that over, kind of as a fraction or a ratio, x2, which is the second x value, x2 minus x1, which is right here. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's the change in y over the change in x. So what does that mean for this table here? Well, y2 is 7 and y1 is 4. So we've got 7 minus 4 over x2 is 2 minus x1 is 1. So 2 minus 1. And that is going to equal our rate of change. That's going to equal m. So 7 minus 4 gives us 3. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So 3 over 1. That's going to equal our slope. Okay? So 3 over 1 is our slope. That means m equals 3. Our slope is 3. So we found m. Check. We're done with that part. Now we're going to move on to step 2. Step 2 is to find b. Step 2 is to find b. And we do that by plugging in an x and y value with m and solving for b. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite our equation in slope-intercept form, this y equals mx plus b. And we're going to plug in m because we know m. We're going to plug in a value that we choose for x and the value that goes with it for y. So let's plug in x1 and y1. So y equals, let's use y1 for y. Okay, so if y equals 4, because that's the y1 value, so if y equals 4, and that is equal to mx plus b. So now we're going to plug in the m. So 4 equals 3, because m is 3. And now we need to do our x value. So we're going to do our x1 value, which is 1. So times 1 plus b. So now we have enough filled in this equation that we can solve for b. And we did that because we had y. Oops. We did that because we had y, which we used y1, equals m, which is our slope. We just found that. Okay. X, and we used x1. So there's an invisible multiplication symbol here that you can't see. So y equals mx plus b. Okay? That's the equation we just used. And now we're just using that to solve for b. So let's go ahead and work it backwards. So 4 equals 3 times 1. That's just 3. Plus b. Now we got to keep working it backwards, so we can subtract 3 from each side. Minus 3 minus 3. And we're left with 1 equals b. So now we know what our b value is. Our initial value. That's b is 1. So now we've solved for both m, that was step 1, and now we found b, which is step 2, because b is 1. And now we're on to step 3, and this is kind of the combination of all of them. Step 3 is to rewrite the equation with what we know for m and b and solve for the unknown values. So we're going to rewrite the equation with what we know for m and b and solve for the unknown values. So we know y equals m, which is 3, times x plus b, which is 1. Y equals mx plus b. We just found our equation. We wrote it. That is our equation. And so our unknown value in this equation is, well, if x equals 1, or sorry, if x equals 4, what does y equal? If x equals 4, what does y equal? Well, let's solve for that. So if y is unknown, but we know that the slope is 3, and x equals 4, and our intercept is 1, we can solve for what y is. So y equals 3 times 4, which is 12, plus 1. So y equals 13. So now we can go up to our equation and we can plug in 13. And now we've completed our table. So I know this is probably an abstract practice for some of you guys. So make sure you take down your notes and you get down the 3 steps really well so you can see them very clearly in your notes. And if you need to go back and pause and copy them down, please do. And then there's a video attached in this lesson that goes over slope-intercept form a little bit more, and there's going to be another video that walks you guys through some more example problems. So please use those before you start the practice today. Good job and good luck.